thick, robust skin to keep it. Potatoes are my first favorite survival crop. Tubers, actually. I know, that's not what the title says. The title says second favorite, and that's what we're going to talk about next. But I figured if I was talking about the second, you'd want to know the first. My name's Brian. Welcome. One of the difficult things when you're growing food is it's perishable. Real food doesn't have preservatives in it, so you have to store it. Storing food can be tricky. There are certain foods that I absolutely love, but don't preserve very well, or they take a lot of work to preserve, like strawberries. You have to turn them into strawberry preserves. Wow, look at that, it's amazing. But in terms of a prepper food or a survival food, you want something that's calorically dense and really doesn't take much time and effort to store. And that's why squash are one of my favorite things. They come in their own package, and depending on the type, can last on a shelf for up to a year. Seminole pumpkins, as a matter of fact, we have opened 13 months after harvesting and they were still good. Some of your more grocery type squash, like butternut, there's a honey squash that's really good. The ones that have very thin skins don't tend to hold up as long. You want something with a thick, robust skin to keep the air out. Last year, when we planted potatoes, we were assaulted by bugs and it was egregious. We did better with squash, but the only squash that really did anything to speak of were like a honeydew hybrid mix that were very delicious, but they were only shelf stable about 3 months. Our Seminole pumpkins and other things didn't do as well. I think I know why. We were attacked by squash bugs, which are evil, 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 proof of the fall. But we have a secret weapon this year, not pesticides, that I think is gonna help us get ahead. What's that, you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked, but first, let's plant some squash. We are here with the ever lovely, intelligent, and gardening guru, Mrs. Flannel. Woo! What are we planting today, Mrs. Flannel?
Today we're planting out a potential survival crop and also our winter fodder for the animals. This is Tahitian melon squash. I planted them probably 3 weeks ago, and you can see, using my soil blocker, you can see how huge they got. It's insane. That's just like in a little 2-inch block. It's Tahitian melon squash, and then we have some Seminole pumpkins over here as well. They have a very long shelf life.
They do have a very long shelf life.
Yeah.
We ran into bugs last year. What is going to be our secret weapon for surviving the squash-ageddon bug apocalypse?
Squash-ageddon. Squash-bug-ageddon. We have terrible, terrible squash bugs.
Awful.
And the only squash that I was able to grow successfully last year was a honey nut squash. It's like a butternut, a mini butternut. And I started those early. Everything else I direct seeded.
So that's our hope. Our secret weapon this year is we have started these weeks ago. This is the first week, really, it's safe to plant them out temperature-wise. So we're hoping that they will actually mature quickly enough and provide us with squash before the bugs happen, because the bugs will happen.
They will happen.
And typically what happens with squash is you'll get one good harvest, and even though there might have been stuff coming up behind it, the bugs will take it from there. So we're hoping that since we already have leaves the size of our hands, that they will mature, pop out the kiddos, and we can eat them. Now we are going to have some cross-pollination between the Tahitian melon squash and the Seminole pumpkin, but that's okay, both will be edible. So we'll see what comes out. You can plant these things a 1/4 mile apart and they can still cross-pollinate. So unless you plant all of one type and that's it, and nobody around you plants anything that will cross-pollinate, you're gonna end up with some sort of wacky hybrid.
Or you separate time-wise. You know, so I start the Tahitian melon squash way early and then I do my Seminole squash. But then my problem is still the bugs. The Seminoles won't have a chance. Right. So we're just gonna risk it.
Early. That's the secret. Early.
Early and plant often.
Plant early, plant often. Like voting. Hey. And hopefully our efforts aren't squashed by the bugs. Beep, 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 beep. So let me tell you where they're going. We've made these berms that run all the way along here. This is in our orchard area. And we're gonna try and avoid mowing in here anyways because it is the orchard area and we don't want to run over any of our new little saplings. So we're just gonna plant here and hopefully let it overrun this area. This is the pumpkin patch, which, as I said, we tried last year, and actually you can see those piles of dirt. And that was where our unsuccessful efforts were. Now this time we are using a proprietary blend that we have made ourselves for our soil. It is a combination of poop, wood chips, and dirt from our property that has been broken up, mixed together. We'll see how it goes. So these were started on 3/27, and we are guesperts here. The amount of berm that we made actually works almost perfectly with the amount of plants that we have. Woo! I forgot to mention, when talking about a survival crop, we are not trying to grow enough mango beets. Not mango beets, that's for the pigs. We are not trying to grow enough Tahitian melon or Seminole pumpkins to live off of in case of the apocalypse. But it is a good survival food, and it is one that we actually enjoy. Cut them in half, roast them like 40 minutes, a little butter, it's delicious. This area would not feed your family for a year, so I don't want any false pretenses. But last year we were not successful in growing hardly any. So right now we're trying to figure out how we can be successful, and then we will upscale. So, truth in advertising. So we're gonna go ahead and water those in. It's not hot today, so we can water them right now. We're not expecting rain for another, well, there's a 50% chance in about 4 days. So we don't want all that work to go to waste. So this year we've learned soil blockers, definitely worth the money. So we'll see if we can avoid our efforts being squashed by the bugs. You'll have to stay tuned. Thanks for joining us today. Please hit that like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And we'll see you next time here at Flannel Farms. Bye.